May I call this meeting to order? And may I extend a very good morning to all. And on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, may I welcome all the officials from the Auditor General's Department, the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, members of the media, and the public. Let me advise that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email, that is parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. The purpose of this morning's meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine a special audit of the operations of the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited, with particular reference to the development and upgrading of sporting facilities in Trinidad. May I just remind all of us that the Auditor General's report represents an overview of the sports company operations, with particular emphasis on the delivery of high expenditure sporting facilities and the extent to which the government's objectives of sport for all is being achieved. The report is based on fieldwork which was undertaken during the period October the 13th to March 2014. The report also captures some of the major challenges of the sports company, such as frequent changes in chief executive officers, fluctuations in staff departures, litigation following restructuring, performance indicators are not well defined or measurable, rationale for construction of sporting facilities, justification of national facilities in delivering elite performance, justification for the national facilities in encouraging sport tourism, progress in delivering the national facilities has been slow, and construction of facilities in the same locality. The report also proposes the following recommendations: develop a comprehensive performance regime, define measurable targets, monitor robustly the cost effectiveness of the associated projects and programs, apply lessons learned from internal projects and program activities, develop a clear strategy for funding national sporting organization, develop risk management plans and processes that include risk identification, evaluation of the probability and impact of risk, risk mitigation, monitoring and review, implement a communication strategy in order to facilitate any future organizational change process, maintain proper records and produce audited financial statements on a regular basis, and of course review regular financial information on its activities to exercise sufficient oversight of its handling of public monies. In light of what I've said, this committee is desirous of hearing from the key stakeholders here today to determine the status of the implementation of the recommendations and other measures to overcome the challenges and findings that were highlighted in the report. The role of our committee is to help the sports company to improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. At this time, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the officials with us this morning. First, I will ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Then we will ask the Auditor General's team to introduce themselves. After, the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, and finally, the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'll ask my colleagues on my right to start with introductions.
Good morning, everyone. Tim Gopi Singh, Vice Chairman.
Just press. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Tim Gopi Singh, Vice Chairman and member.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Primus. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Primus, member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Small. I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. Foster Cummings, committee member.
A very good morning. Fitzgerald Hines, Member of Parliament and member of this committee.
May I ask members of the Auditor General's Department to introduce themselves?
Good morning. I am Jayawanti Ramdas, Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning to all. I'm Luis Hernandez, Acting Assistant Auditor General.
Morning, everyone. I am Cyril Barron, Assistant Audit Director.
Ministry of Finance, Investments. Oh, there's one more. Sorry, ma'am.
That's okay. Good morning, everyone. Nicole Coburn, Legal Officer, Auditor General's Department.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Just take off the mics first. And we'll now ask the Finance Ministry Investments Division.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvette Bam. I'm the Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation Investment Division.
Good morning, Ryan Maharaj, Acting Senior Business Analyst, Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Ramdahan, Acting Permanent Secretary.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lyndon Burton. I'm the Acting Assistant Project Coordinator in the Project Management Unit of the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Good morning. I am Violet Joseph, Director of Monitoring and Evaluation.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Phillips, Chairman, Sport Company.
Good morning, everyone. Jason Williams, Financial Controller, Sport Company.
Morning, everyone. Anthony Blake, Head of the Facilities Unit at Sport Company.
Morning, everyone. Jiwan Kaulasa, Internal Audit at Sport GT. Good morning, Dexter Brown, Acting Head of Projects, SPORTT.
Good morning, Naveen Maraj, Legal Officer, Sport Company.
Well, thank you very much, and once again, welcome. May I take this up? We have somebody in the back?
Melly Price, Project Administrator.
Just repeat.
Melly Price, Project Administrator.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Well, may I again on behalf of, yes?
Thank you for your ear, Mr. Chairman. Through you, of course, since this report affects business as far back as November 2014 and prior to that, of course, I think it is important for me to understand whether any of the operators here were actually with the company at that time. I know it's not about personalities, but I know it would help if we have an idea of whether we are all dealing with an historic record, having come to it like I have now, or whether we have people who were actually on the scene at that time, and it would be very helpful. From 2011, sort of.
Well, what I'll do is that the chairman of this sport company is about to make some opening remarks. So maybe in your opening remarks, you can address the issue raised by Mr. Fitzgerald Hines as to whether the team that is here today is a completely new team or has been around for a few years. 2011 to the present time. So I would now like to open to you, Mr. Chairman, to bring a few opening remarks, and we will begin to deal with the issues thereafter. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, everyone. And just as the question was asked, as the first thing I'd like to deal with, yes, we have several members who have been involved with the sport company, on board with the sport company, during the period of which the audit would have been conducted. So yes, we do have, as well as some new people who I think can still make a contribution as to some of the things in terms of the direction forward. Now, we see this as an opportunity because we know particularly the audit is focusing on a lot of the functions of sport company. But we also see this as an opportunity to have dialogue with the national sporting bodies and people that are involved and following these fraternities that we aim to serve. Because a big part of it in terms of sport is what are the actual outcomes that we want to derive based on the things that we do. So we hope to be able to give a sound idea of what the vision in going forward is. The fact that the time that we have spent, myself coming on as chairman, and having almost a year in terms of reviewing the company and the way that it communicates with sporting bodies, the way that it communicates and interacts with its contractors and so on, and its objectives, and really finding ways in terms of recalibrating the sport company. Because I think now, given the particular time that we find ourselves in, it's time for us to become a bit more creative and to really stretch all of the resources that we have to the point where we are optimized, we provide a function that is of worth to the general community. And in addition to that, is really about redefining what our objectives in sport, both SPORTT and the sporting landscape, to bring to you the concept of the sporting industry, or sporting industry, because what we have found is we have a sporting sector, but there are things that need to be put in place and gaps that are there that we need to fill to be able to create this sporting industry. To bring to your attention that we believe that sport function in its own ecosystem, its own environment, and to be able to have that environment or that ecosystem flourish, there needs to be a balance. Now, there are certain things that are on the books that we can't change in terms of the facilities that we have. What we can do is implement strategies and so on that we get the best utilization out of these facilities. And also it is to try to change, I think from the discussions that we've heard in the past, even for the justification of such facilities, what the measurable outcomes are. Because we find that is measured in a dollars and cents perspective and not really what the value of it to the national community is. So we see this, we know we have members here at the table who have been involved in sport and have an idea of sport, and how it is that as members of cabinet that are here as well, that could help us in terms of achieving those objectives from a national perspective.
Thank you very much. May I begin by addressing a question to the Auditor General? And I will come back to the sports company. I would like to know on behalf of the committee, how was the sports company of Trinidad and Tobago identified for this special audit by the Auditor General's Department?
Well, we have various criteria that we use to determine what to audit. And some of those criteria used were, we looked at the impact. Would the report have an impact to produce financial savings? We looked at the materiality of the amount of monies that were put forward to SPORTT. We looked at the interest, citizens' interests, Parliament's interest, media interests. We also looked at the resources that we had in-house to do the audit. So we looked at all those things. We also looked at, we did a risk analysis of the company to put forward a justification for choosing this audit. And we approached the audit by looking at two things, answering two main questions. Were the right things being done in the right way? And are the right things being done for the future? So those are the reasons and the criteria used to determine the audit.
Okay. And if I could come back to the sports company through its chairman, could you tell us what is the status of the implementation of the many recommendations in the special audit reports from the Auditor General?
Well, I think, as I said a little earlier, one of the things that we had to do when we came in was review the sport company. Of course, the Auditor General's report was a great tool in terms of us being able to look at particular departments. I think it was quite comprehensive and identified quite a lot of things that myself as an individual outside of the loop, so to speak, may have speculated on as to how things were to come into being. And yes, one of the first things that we did, we recognized that there were quite a bit of policies that were in draft form, and the first one we tackled was the procurement policy. We also have been dealing with several other policies in terms of making sport company compliant, in addition to being more transparent and as far as delivering a better service. We do recognize part of the importance of this is we're one of the very few institutions that has a back page dedicated to it every day, 15 minutes or 25% of every newscast dedicated to what we do. And we see that as a significant area in terms of which we are being held accountable from a public perspective. A big part of it in coming back into the actual sporting aspect of it. I have several members of heads of departments here who can help in terms of their particular departments, but I will start with sport because that is my strength and background in leading that role. Now, one of the challenges that we face in adapting and driving sport forward is the fact that we have sporting bodies, which we have 15 under our umbrella, who the majority of them are Olympic type sports, or Olympic contenders, or have ambitions for Olympic participation besides cricket. And with that, we deal with many organizations that are still functioning on a voluntary basis. So therefore, we are putting resources behind the sporting bodies, but reaching, we have identified that there's some blocks there in terms of these sporting bodies that are functioning on a voluntary basis. Some of them, to a certain extent, one or two of them outside of our umbrella. There are many sporting bodies that still operate out of the trunk of their car. And so many things in terms of optimizing their functionality has been office space, in terms of having them have a home, in terms of getting them to understand the importance, as I said earlier, the ecosystem, and where events and activities come under that whole idea of a catalyst and an emulation factor, a motivation factor. So some of the things that we've found is that we had to push them in the direction of trying to increase membership. Now, some of the stumbling blocks that we faced with that, because we had to get into more of a social sciences type of perspective with regards to these things.
May I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this audit?
Yes, correct.
There are 15 recommendations. Could you tell us, within the year that you would have been in receipt of this report, 28th of November, 2014, today is the 2nd of November, 2016. How many of the 15 recommendations have the sport company implemented thus far? That is what we at the committee level would be interested in hearing at this time. Could you share with us how many recommendations have been implemented?
Okay, so I started off by having you sharing with you that the fact that we have sent forward and dealt with the procurement policy of the company, which was a major part of the findings of the Auditor General. With regards to, we have internal audit. There were some issues that and recommendations made, particularly in the areas of audit. So I would like to pass you on to Mr. Cowless, who could tell you some of the work that has been done there. The subcommittees of the sport company. Sorry?
No, what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, is that if you can just, we like a sequence,
okay,
or we like a sequencing of what we are dealing with. There are 15 recommendations. If you can help the committee by saying, in terms of recommendation number 1,
okay,
we have not yet.
Sorry, what page you on? Sorry.
I'm on page 11.
Page 11. Thank you.
You can go through the 15 and let the committee know which ones you have begun to implement, which ones you are yet to implement, and when are they going to be implemented. That is what we would like to know, so we can seek further clarification, so we can help you as we go along.
Okay. They have a different, sorry, the copy that I have, page 11, has no, 12, oh, sorry, page 12.
Yes. Yes. And seeing that the PS is near you.
Yes.
And the PS is accountable as well to this parliament and to the people. Maybe he can help you, deal with this matter in a very sequential way.
Okay, understood.
Good morning. Basically, the report, November 2014, I came to the ministry basically in June 2014, right? So I would have brought across members with some institutional memory, the more senior, two of the more senior officials in the ministry. So when you look at the Auditor General report, there's expectation that there'll be a written response submitted within a time frame, right, of corrective actions to be implemented. I would have searched our files, and I found no written response to basically, to document what this action has been taken. But action, since I came on board, I know the ministry has been taking action to rectify a lot of the anomalies in terms of the mismanagement and malpractice that has been taking place. So like, you go through the comprehensive performance regime, right? Both the ministry and SPORTT, we have been sitting together, troubleshooting the systems to find out where are the weaknesses, because if you have a chain and you have weak links, the system is not functional. So we're basically removing all the weak links.
Mr. PS, may I stop you for a moment? How long have you been PS?
I've been PS acting from the 8th of September.
8th of September, when?
I came on board as Deputy PS from the 6th of the 3rd of June 2014. Acted in interim, short periods between then and 8th of September. So I started acting as from the 8th of September 2016 consecutively.
Also from the 8th of September 2016?
Right, yeah.
You have been acting as PS?
Yeah, but before that, acting as PS, I would have worked with like monitoring evaluation to go out into the projects SPORTT have been implementing to find out, right? So,
could you indicate to this committee in a very direct way whether any of these recommendations, 15, are submitted by the Auditor General under your watch and with your institutional memory sitting next to you or near you? Could you indicate whether any of these recommendations have so far been implemented, any of them out of the 15, in full?
Yes.
Could you identify which ones?
Okay. In terms of the strategy for funding sport organization. No, which one is this one? Strategy for each one. Let's go through each one.
Well, what I can say in terms of understanding the sequence in which you want to have the items delivered, our service level agreement with the sporting bodies have been updated with regards to being able to conform to some of these things in terms of tracking.
Which recommendation
so we
are you referring to?
So most of the recommendations here from recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, deals with the interaction between our sport development unit and even elite development unit that interacts directly with the sporting bodies in terms of, because remember, through them we collect all of this information. Now it's important to note that the way that we implement these changes is through compliance for funding. So the collection of all of this information comes through the sporting bodies, through the sporting officers, then through to the department head. So this is an ongoing process in terms of us developing the NSO, and helping us to create those, and helping us to get that information and collect that database. Now, one of the things that we have discussed at board.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're looking at in terms of the strategy and is identifying that we actually need a sport directory covering item 7 to assist us in developing that part of sport. There are other items here with regards to.
I will come back to you, but I'll open the floor now to other members, and I will come back to you later because I have some other vital questions that I'd like to put forward, but I'd like my other colleagues to join us at this time. Any member. I recognize Mr. Small.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity. Welcome again to all members present from Sport Company, Auditor General, and I call former colleagues from Ministry of Finance. Mr. Chairman, I've listened intently to the responses we received so far, and I want to be clear about my perception of what has come as responses. I'm not sure if they were answers. And I'm very concerned about some of the responses also within this document here that you supplied. I'm sure you're familiar with it. This is a document that would have been prepared by a company. My first question, Mr. Chairman, has to do with the issues around the strategic direction of the company. And correct me if I'm wrong, I just heard in your response that in respect to the recommendations of the Auditor Generals, you've dealt with, I think, 1 through 7, in part or in whole, in some of them. Okay, because I would give you the opportunity to refine that answer, because the question I have, if you have an entity that, according to the Auditor General's report and their findings, you are operating without any strategic direction in the context that you're doing things and there's no way to measure what you're doing, then if you are doing something, not able to measure what you're doing, who knows what you're doing? There's no system in place to measure what you're doing, capture what you're doing, and then report back. So I would like to understand, what have you, as the chairman, coming in, and the Auditor General, you have met this finding there. You'd have met the finding from the Auditor General that, listen, the company has been operating with a plan that has no structure that allows for capturing what you're doing, measuring, because if there's an old saying, what gets measured gets done. So if you're not able to measure it, then we're really not sure what you're doing. And it is a critical finding from the Auditor General. So I would like to find out from you, as you are the chairman, and you've come in and you've seen this report, and there's a critical finding here. What have you done to try to ameliorate or deal with that particular issue?
Yeah, and it comes back to what we're seeing in terms of a significant portion of that work is done through the National Sporting Organization. Through our sporting officers, we then work with them in terms of interacting with the sporting bodies, because at this point in time, we have no, how should I say, direct coaching programs with the majority of these sporting bodies, apart from in athletics, where it is we have employees like Keyshawn Walcott's coach and so on, that actually tracks and measures performance. You wanted to ask a question?
Mr. Chair, through you, let me probably rephrase my response. Okay. You are the chairman of Sport Company. The Auditor General had a finding that the Sport Company has been operating without proper strategic direction and measurable targets. You came and met that finding. What have you done to help the Sport Company fix that problem about the company operating without a defined plan and targets that are measurable? What have you done to date?
As I said, some of the things that we've done, we had to work with the sporting organizations in establishing those targets in the first place, right? So some of the things that were communicated was, one, we need to have information with regards to the amount of people that are subscribers to your fraternity. Our strategy really has been, in terms of, you would have seen, we put a press ad in the paper. We had an incident earlier this year where it was the Sport Company and the Ministry of Sport was being called upon as to what we will be going to be doing in terms of intervening in a particular national issue with regards to qualification for the Olympics. That is where it was clearly defined that we are limited in terms of how we treat with sporting bodies with regards to the running of their institutions. Now, are you now speaking, because this portion of it dealt with the sporting bodies, are you now going into areas of facilities and so on? or are we dealing with the sporting bodies in this first section that we had identified?
Mr. Chair, I will not detain the proceedings because I think that the responses that I need, that I am not getting, we will have to, through the chairman, I think we will have to request it in writing because the response, but I want to shift my question into the permanent secretary of the ministry, because the line ministry would have also received the Auditor General's report. And I have a similar question. You have a report that one of your line agencies has been operating without a system that allows them to track what they're doing and measure how they're spending the money of the taxpayers of this country. What I would like to find out what the ministry, through the current permanent secretary or what some of your supporting team, what would have been your communication to sport that we have received this document, and critical finding here of the Auditor General is that you are spending taxpayers' money and you are not able to measure and report on what you're doing properly. What would have been the guidance that the ministry would have sent to the sport company? Mr. Permanent Secretary or a member of your team.
Okay, morning again. Well, basically, this report was dated 2014, right? And the permanent secretary who was there at the time, right? I can't really say exactly what communication would have happened between the two entities, between the ministry and SPORTT. But I'd like to highlight something just for clarification. The governing bodies are split between Ministry of Sport and SPORTT. There's 16, well, reduced now to 15, at the bigger ones at SPORTT. And the 36, right, smaller bodies, medium size, are based at the Ministry of Sport. Okay? There's both entities have projects departments. We have a project department looks after the swimming pool, indoor sport and arena. The SPORTT looks after the bigger facilities, the stadia and those mega sport facilities in Couva, right? So you'll find that there's a split in the operational framework. Now, the ministry would have dealt with this way back in terms of putting forward the concept of the Sport Commission, where the proposal was to bring put the operations together under one entity, right? So the management of the national governing bodies was supposed to fall under the Sport Commission, right? The management of facilities, bring it under the Sport Commission. The ministry was supposed to assume the role of a regulatory and monitoring evaluation status and policy, right? That did not happen when the proposal was made to create the Sport Commission. And the SPORTT was, came on board as an interim entity to deal with the continuation of the administration of sport, right, on the other side. Because the problem we have in the Ministry of Sport is that the funding we get on the Ministry of Sport under the MPI is for non-profit. The ministry cannot apply our funding for profit entities like sport promoters who create the industry, right? So the sport entity has the mandate to do the business side of sport, right? Sport tourism, engaging with private-public partnership to promote sports so that we have a return on investment. And that is it legally, we have a restriction in terms of how we can operate, and this is why SPORTT was created to further the mandate of governance of sport.
All right. One final question, and Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence. I just have one final question this round, and it's to the chairman of SPORTT. And I want to direct you to page 6 of your submission. It's page 6 on this copy I have. And there's a statement that I would like to get a comment on, for a response on from the chairman. It's at close to the bottom of the page, number 4. And I will quote. It says, the role of the Board of Directors and Management of SPORTT is for oversight and to ensure that the minister's vision and objectives are met. And it continues. Is it I am struggling with this statement that it's in writing. It's something in my respectful view, shouldn't even say. But what is written here is that the role of the Board of Directors, paraphrasing here, is to ensure that the minister's visions and objectives are met. So that I would like a response, please, from the chairman on that, given that this is a document generated by SPORTT. You have the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, yes?
Yes.
Give a response.
I think I understand what you're saying in terms of the comment being a bit broad.
Yes, or the company.
Sorry?
I agree with the implied on the phone of my friend. It should really be the government rather than the minister.
Yes. So
Sorry about that, yes.
So
we should make that correction.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. At the end of the day, we are an implementation arm.
Yes.
And when we get directives, those directives or those things come from cabinet in terms of what it is they expect us to do regards to particular projects. However, just to go back to the issue of what you're asking in terms of what have we done, I think to let you know the situation is one where we had an extensive time of assessment, an assessment with a moving target, so to speak, because the environment was changing. The priority was opening the national facilities that were, to a certain extent, 75% complete. We saw that as a very important thing to be done because a significant investment was made in those facilities, and to bring them online was critical. And so we did get that imperative in terms of being able to move forward. But to answer your question in terms of what did we find during this period of assessment and in various levels of implementation along the period of time, was understanding the importance of talent ID and communicating that to the sporting bodies and putting things in place to assist with that. Identifying the importance of communication and understanding. Coming back to the original point that I was making in terms of a directory, there's no way and format that has ever been done that the general public has access to information with regards to who are the coaches in various sports, and where do they train, what is the availability of times and slots, facilities, everything from physiotherapists to massage therapists to anybody involved in the sporting industry. So this is one of the things that we identified as a gap that needed to be put in place.
All right, thank you very much. I now recognize Mr. Hines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just as a backdrop, we had the Off Commission of Inquiry in this country that issued 92 recommendations as it related to UDCOT. And when I last checked, I'm not so sure what became of those. P.S. We are told that this company, as many others, does not earn money, doesn't retain money. Its funding comes through the line ministry. That is correct, isn't it?
That is correct.
And the permanent secretary is the accounting officer. And therefore, Senator Small's question to you is very, very relevant as the permanent secretary. And happily, I'm speaking to someone who was there at the material times under review. So with that as a backdrop, let me ask, you went into that ministry after the life sport fiasco, and I'm calling it that deliberately.
I was there when the ministry was in meltdown mode, life sport.
In the throes of life sport.
Yeah, so
and you would have lived through and witnessed all of this as permanent secretary. Am I correct?
And I would, yes.
Deputy permanent secretary.
Yes, I would have had the opportunity to examine some of the questionable things that are happening.
I find the answers to the questions as put by the chairman and Senator Small thus far in relation to what has been done in respect of the Auditor General's recommendations in these horrendous circumstances, I find the answers unpersuasive, unexciting, without comfort to the citizens of this country. That's what I think. And for you, as Deputy Permanent Secretary and now Acting Permanent Secretary, in light of the backdrop that I have set, the UDCOT, which was of national interest, of commission, and the life sport in particular, which would have been of interest to you, The recommendations of the Auditor General in this report are to be the guiding lights, the Bible for your deliberations and advance since they were issued in 2014. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree.
And how then do we hear these watery, flimsy, unpersuasive responses to the firm question that the Auditor General's report and its recommendations ought to be carried out to the letter? We are today in the same position as we were when this was issued on the basis of what I'm hearing here today, and therefore likely to repeat it.
Just gives a background. Basically, there have been a lot of corrective measures instituted within the Ministry of Sport as well as SPORTT, right? A lot of the systems, the reason why there was a breakdown in the system, when we look at it is when we look at records management, right? A core area, manipulation from junior level staff, that has been fixed, right? In terms of who has authority to sign off within the ministry, as well as if you look at the statement here made, minister's vision objective, right? And that was the tone at the time. That was the modus operandi at the time, right? In terms of, we have a strategic plan. We're supposed to have an implementation plan, which the board is supposed to follow. But then again, you have an ad hoc request coming in, right, to make adjustments to those plans, right? It may be situational, right? And it comes at the executive.
Mr. Deputy Permanent Secretary or Acting, PS, could you point us to the recommendation that you're referring to as you make your submission?
Record management. Which one? That would be. All right. So we're speaking about recommendation number 14.
Recommendation number 14?
Right. Yeah. So the maintenance of proper records and produce audited financial statements on a regular basis. Right. This has been instituted in terms of, we did it for the boxing board as well as SPORTT, right? In terms of getting the accountability. Before releases are to request for releases in terms of accounting for how they would have expended their releases for the previous month, right? These measures are in place and doing like a fiscal projection for the year to say that how, like, you got a release allocated amount in the budget that may not be the request that was made, right? Then you have to do some prioritization. So they have to do adjustments in terms of where they're going to prioritize and how they're going to apply the budgetary allocation, right? So in terms of managing the financial records, right, you basically, these documents are submitted back to us in terms of the adjustments to be made, right? And we would use this in the execution of the SPORTT program of activities.
P.S. I must admit I'm still not comforted. Right. Your job, and when I say your, I mean as PS, and of course the board, and the management, even though some persons were there then, it is your duty to fix the obvious problems that were identified by the Auditor General. And as the chairman of this committee indicated earlier, what we are most interested in, while the history is horrendous, we are most interested in the way forward, that we, on the advice of those paid from the Office of the Attorney General, will not be condemned to repeating this. Now, let me get in a little bit, yes, the Auditor General, let me get in a little bit to the this that I'm troubled about, because I didn't want to get into the this, because until we are satisfied that the this and what led to it is truncated, stopped, blocked, and wouldn't happen again, it is almost useless getting into the this, because we could repeat this. You with me, P.S.?
I agree.
You with me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
No. Let me get in a little bit to the this. Senator Small alluded to it earlier. This is a company that expended and continues to expend substantial millions of public funds, purportedly to bring about total sports in Trinidad and Tobago to promote healthy lifestyles and the objectives that are listed here. I'm just paraphrasing them. And doing so efficiently, and it is driven, I take it, by public need, professional analysis of the thing, and public need. We have a situation here where, at the very top, we are told that several chief executive officers, over a 10-year period, 5 left the organization, the services of 3 were terminated, and 2 resigned. I would like to get in writing the reasons for the termination and through the chair, of course, Mr. Chairman, and the resignations. Because it is clear to us that that kind of turbulence and instability at the very top has, in fact, the Auditor General has indicated clearly that that kind of chopping and changing has affected the work of the sport company, but it did not affect the spending. It affected the efficiency and all of that, but the spending went on apace, interestingly enough. The other thing is, we see here that the staff numbers increased by 76% between 2009 and 2013, which suggests to me that we went on a hiring spree. And if I know Trinidad and Tobago good enough, it is about new people in position, and we have jobs to create. So we increased staffing by 76%. The recent Olympics and the results, and I want to congratulate sincerely all of those citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who went out there on the world stage to represent our country and did so to the best of their abilities. In particular, I would like to congratulate the second medal winner, young Keyshawn Walcott. All of them did us proud to the best of their ability, but they depended to a large extent on the support that the state would have offered, largely through the sports company. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. The general results are not, in my view, commensurate with the kind of expenditure that was directed to the athletes, the large number of them as athletes, through the elite sports programs. The general result, in my view, is not commensurate with the kind of expenditure that went in there. I hope you would agree with that. Are you wanting to agree with that? Or you would like to reject that proposition?
No, I mean, I would agree that from the general public's perspective and the citizens of the country regards the investment made, greater results would have, we had expected that they would want greater results.
And something is obviously wrong from the Auditor General's findings with the sport company, the administration. Right? Let me tell you. This report tells us very dramatically that on the 5th of January 2011, and I'm not going to pretend that date is significant, on the 5th of January 2011, the sport company contracted at a cost of $1.06 million, that's $1,060,000, a company called DEDGE, D-E, capital E-D-G-E Consulting, to begin an exercise of reviewing the staff and the human resource issues at the sport company on the 5th of January 2011.
Excuse me, Senator, just a correction. The company was hired by the Ministry of Sport, not the sport company.
Well, it was put to work at the sports company to carry out a human resource exercise dealing with the staffing question. On the 7th of January, 2 days, less than 2 days later, 43% of the staff members, including the CEO, were dismissed. Yes, yes. We then found that these matters were taken to the court. It is my understanding that no defenses were filed in these matters. Is that correct?
Can I put that to
Yes.
our legal, please, who would be familiar with the
Yes.
cases?
In other words, the sport company offered no answer to the allegations against it for wrongful dismissals in the court. None. And I'm seeing in one case, in one of 9 completed cases, the fee for the lawyers or lawyer was $137,000. No defense was offered. Is that correct?
Member, good morning. Yes, that is indeed correct. Those matters predate my appointment at the sport company. But to answer your question directly, yes, that is correct.
So we paid a company, as I break to allow one of my colleagues to enter, $106 million. Within 2 days, let me ask another question then. Those dismissals less than 2 days later, was it on the advice of The Edge, or was it just done? Notwithstanding their costly engagement.
I am not in a position to answer that.
We would like to know that in writing.
Yes, please.
With some urgency. I'll give way to one of my friends.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a very short statement before I ask some specific questions. Because I'm sitting here and it seems as though we are in a maze and going round in circles at the incredible, weak, and troubling explanations that are being offered here this morning by not only the sports company chairman, but the acting permanent secretary. And it points to a serious knowledge and capability gaps at both the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs and particularly at the level of the board. It appears to me, based on the responses, that the board continues to operate as a law unto itself. It has clearly disregarded the recommendations of the Auditor General. They can point us, Mr. Chairman, to not a single recommendation. We were pointed to recommendation 14. When you go to recommendation 14, it states, Sport TT should maintain proper records and produce audited financial statements on a regular basis. We have heard nothing to support the indication that either the ministry or the board would have engaged in such an exercise. If we were in Parliament, Mr. Chairman, I would say that the sports company and the ministry is engaging in filibustering. And I am astonished, Mr. Chairman. I am very, very much sensitized and knowledgeable about the public service and how the public service function. And I sit here astonished at what is emerging. I have formed my own point of view. I would like the chairman of the board, Mr. Michael Phillips, a short while ago told this committee that in response to my honorable colleague, Minister Fitzgerald Hines, with regards to this company, The Edge, just told this committee that the sports company did not employ that company. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Michael Phillips, I would like to draw your attention to page 8 of this document.
Yes,
All right? Your document, page 8. your document, page 8, the paragraph directly under number 4. Number 4 reads, who has been responsible for verifying and approving reports internally? Under number 4, not that paragraph, the following paragraph that begins, issue, fluctuations in staff departure. I draw your attention to the third to last line, and I would like to read it for you, Mr. Phillips. On 5th January 2011, SPORTT contracted the Edge Consulting at a cost of $1.6 million to begin the exercise. Would you like to reconsider the information that you have placed before this committee, Mr. Phillips?
What I can say is we have no record of payments.
No, wait. Before you speak, just to consolidate what Minister Batista said. Mr. Phillip, you have a copy of this report?
Yes.
I want you to turn to page 6 of this report. And go to para 2. The Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is saying that your company contracted the Edge Consulting at a cost of $1.06 million. I think what Mrs. Jennifer Batiste is asking, whether you are denying your company contracted this firm, because the Auditor General is stating in its report that you did. So are you denying, are you challenging what the Auditor General has said? Because you have just said that you did not hire that company. It was the Ministry of Sport. That's what you just told this meeting. In the Auditor General's report on page 6, it states that your company contracted. We would like an explanation because the Auditor General is here. Who is telling the truth?
What I would like to see is based on the board's request for information, we requested that if there were any payments made to the Edge Consulting, 1. 2, the information that is given here, lower down with one of the questions, it clearly states that coming from the sport company, that the Edge was not hired by the sport company. So in regards to that, based on the because this predates me, we have to go based on the information that was presented to us. So I can only present what was presented to us as a board and put forward to you.
Mr. Chairman, permit me. Mr. Phillips, when did your tenure as chairman of the sports company commence?
December last year.
December 2015.
Yes.
When you became the chairman, did anyone draw to your attention the report of the Auditor General?
Yes.
Did you read it as chairman?
Yes. Hence one of the reasons why we would have asked the questions with regards to that, and that is the information that we would have gotten.
But if you read it as chairman, you would have informed yourself that it was the sport company which contracted the services of the Edge. Because to me, the report is as clear as the sultry sons of summer.
Well, as I could say again, that was based on the information that we had, and further research with regards to that, there was no payment made to them. So we could either we hired them and the services were done for free, or the money didn't come from us, or it was hired elsewhere, And just to bring you back to points 14 and 15, in terms of the recommendations, we're fully compliant as far as that's concerned.
1 second, please. This report, Mr. Chairman, permit me. This report by the Auditor General is not written in highly technical language that seeks to confuse the average reader. It's written in a plain, flowing manner. Anyone assuming the position of chairman of the sport company reading this report must be troubled. Would you agree with that?
Alarmed.
Good. So then one would expect that as chairman, you would have engaged very robustly with a work plan. The recommendations of this report becomes the work plan of the board. That is what the chairman, Mr. Small, Mr. Hines, and myself are trying to extract. What have you all done as a board to implement these recommendations?
So I would like to draw your attention to items 14 and 15 that we're totally compliant on, and several of the other items, as I said, because in my estimation, they dealt with the sporting bodies, and that's why I said the service level agreement, which is a contract that we sign with the sporting bodies that are under our umbrella with regards to that. It addresses a lot of the things that came out of those recommendations, where they're the ones where we interact with them for a great majority of the data collection with regards to that, and the changes in terms of how we deal with those sporting bodies. So if it is you'd like greater details with items 14 and 15, because what happened, we were going through the recommendations and we never got to that point on that page. So if you would like further clarification with 14 and 15, we have Mr. Jason Williams, our financial controller, who would be able to answer any questions with regards to that.
We want, but we want to acknowledge that the financials are up to date from the sports company. We want to acknowledge that. What I want to ask the PS, and I want, just give me a yes or no, I don't want further. Could you tell this committee whether the Edge Consulting was contracted by the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs?
Okay, basically, having looked at this particular...
Just yes or no?
Yes. DH was contracted by Ministry of Sport. I have the documents before me here. I would have done the research prior to this committee to do the, find out why it is we had this anomaly, right, in the report. Basically...
Yeah, what?
Right, yeah.
Auditor General, may I ask you, Auditor General, could we have some clarification on this matter, or would you want to submit it in writing? Because we are confused.
Chair, I think we'll have to double check, but I'm 100% sure what's in the report is what the documentation that we have at the office. But I could always forward what we have to the chairman.
We are quite willing to cooperate on our side as well if there's any, and go into this because as I said, what we are acting, or what I'm stating here is information that I would have gotten. Yeah. And that would have...
Before I ask Dr. Tim Gopi Singh to intervene, the documentation that you have quoted from Acting Permanent Secretary, we would like it to be submitted to us. That's certified, right?
Yes.
That the ministry contracted.
I would like to add some clarification to the DH. Basically, I explained before there is 16 national governing bodies at Sport TT and 36 across the Ministry of Sport. DH was brought up on board to help build institutional capacity in these national governing bodies for sport administration.
All right. All right. Listen, we submit that certified statement that you made a short while ago, that the Ministry of Youth and Sport contracted this company. I turn over to the Honorable Dr. Tim Gopi Singh.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I will just take you to the macro picture now for your answers. The sports company was established in 2004, which is SPORTT. This is now 12 years old. And part of its mandate and responsibility, are you clear what is the mandate of responsibility of the sport company now, based on what is happening and the Auditor General's report? Are you aware what is your mandate as a sport company, as SPORTT? From a macro perspective?
Well, yes. On a broader perspective, we are an implementation arm. We charge with the responsibility of facilitating sport activities, sporting facilities, the maintenance of sport facilities, and also providing services to the sporting bodies, which is one of the main customers of the sport company.
Can I direct you to the issue of you are an implementation arm to achieve the objectives of the national sport policy of Trinidad and Tobago? Are you aware what the national sport policy of Trinidad and Tobago is?
Yes, we have looked at that document for guidance in terms of how we implement or execute.
Do you have that with you, or do you have that, does the board have that national sport policy with them?
Yeah,
and have you created a strategic plan based on the national sport policy of Trinidad and Tobago? And when was that last national sport policy given to you? That's one of your main responsibility, is to achieve the objectives of the national sport policy of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
And it's based on identifying two key areas, the total participation in sport and high performance sport. And I will come back to the recommendations of the Auditor General subsequent to your answer.
What I could tell you, sir, is that policy, as far as we understand, is being reviewed and updated at the Ministry of Sport. And from that, we will take any new directions that come from that.
Are you working under the direction of any? There have been a number of national sport policies, governments come, government change. Which sport policy are you working on at the moment? Can you tell us? Established when? Given to you when? Or that you became aware of? P.S., that's a question for you as well.
Can I answer this? Basically, the sport policy currently is being reviewed. It's in the consultation phase right now. There are a series of consultations being held. The previous policy, there were some areas of shortcomings, and we have added some new areas to improve the sport policy.
When was the last national sports policy given from the Ministry of Sport?
It's 2002 was the
2002. 2000 what?
And 2.
But in that, all right, 2000. So you're working on a national.
We have an advanced sport policy that will be coming out pretty soon. Right,
so
draft.
You're working on a 2002 national sports policy still.
That's the default, but the Baron that they measure.
In your strategic plan and your objectives and your policies, you are working in 2016 based on a sports policy of 2002?
There are some elements of it.
Do you think as permanent secretary, your responsibility to assist the government and assist the minister to help to devise a sport policy, and you were deputy permanent secretary for 2 years before becoming acting permanent secretary, and basically the permanent secretary is the accounting officer, but you become you account for things based on a policy of the ministry.
I was highlighting that the 2002 policy has deficiency shortcomings, right?
Yeah, but I'm asking you.
There are new measures implemented, like the financial accountability of the NGBs, which wasn't previously done in the previous policy.
No,
so these are interim policy measures in place right now, pending the new.
Yes, my colleagues have found that you skirt around the the questions, the answers to the questions. I'm asking you a direct question. You, as permanent secretary now in 2016, and acting permanent secretary or deputy permanent secretary for 2 years, 3 years prior to that, are you allowing the sport company to operate in vacuum in the with a sports policy as antiquated as 2002? And is it not your responsibility to assist in developing a sports policy that is more relevant and more up to date? For sports have changed considerably in 14 years. So I'm just putting that to you, and I think it should be your responsibility and the responsibility of your colleagues to assist the sport company, because they can't do anything unless you define a proper policy, national policy for sport. So I wanted to make that point and then come to the issue of that had total participation in sport and high performance sport. And if we go to recommendations 5 to about 9, 10 in this Auditor General's report, and it indicates under 5 that sport should develop a clear strategy for funding in various national sporting organizations, elite performance, and youth camps. Could you, if you don't have the answer now, could you give us the information regards to how much funding had been available to the Ministry of Sport, and then how much was given to the sport company over the last 5 years, and how much of it was spent, and for what was spent? The sport company. I am looking for that, and I'm not finding that information available. How much was given over the last 5 years to the Ministry of Sport? How much was given to the sport company? How much was spent? And in what areas they were spent?
That information is submitted in writing.
So let's come to the national sporting organizations, and this goes to the chairman. Chairman, how many national sporting organizations are there in Trinidad and Tobago? And how many of these national sporting organizations do you support? And what support do you give to these?
We have 15 under our umbrella at this point in time. The Ministry of Sport facilitates the rest of those sporting bodies. That may be an increasing or decreasing number depending on applications. Permsec, how many you have?
Could you shift the PS? Could you give us, as PS and Ministry of Sport, how many national sporting organizations are there in Trinidad and Tobago?
There's 16. 16 was previously at SPORTT. One has been removed and reassigned to the Ministry of Sport, which carries our count from 36 to 37.
But I know that there are about 39 different sports that are played in Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, if you only support about 16, what has happened? What happens? Mr. Phillip, Chairman, you know you have been involved in sports yourself as a cyclist. And how many, and you will know how many sports are played in Trinidad and Tobago throughout the country.
So the question that you're asking there,
No, I want to asking a general question. How many sports are being played in Trinidad and Tobago at the moment?
That are registered with the ministry?
No, how many sports that you are aware of? I can tell you when I was Minister of Education, 17 sports were played in the schools.
Right.
But you, as a person responsible for sports in Trinidad and Tobago, you can't tell us how many sports are being played?
I am trying to get, you asked the 15 sports are under our umbrella, there are 15 sports. Other than that, there are the sports that are registered with the Ministry of Sport, and in addition to that, there are the unregistered sports. That could be from BMX freestyle to different types of sports.
In your
that are
knowledge, how many unregistered are there then?
I cannot give you that a confirmed answer.
How many are
because they're not registered as bodies.
Is it not part of your responsibility as the sport company to understand and appreciate what is going out there when you have participation by all, or are you only looking for just the sporting organizations that are registered with the ministry. Part of the national sport policy is participation by all in
Yes,
sports.
correct. Yes,
So
if I can give you an
therefore, if
update on
they're registered or not registered,
Yes.
your responsibility is to find those that are not registered and give them some support to build their sporting ability. And are you only going to focus on the 16 that are there registered with you?
All right. So one of the sports, it was 16. One of the sports that has been taken over to the back over to the Ministry of Sport is drafts and checkers.
No, all right. I'm not
All
going
right.
into the
So
details.
with regards to the system that is put in place with regards to how we deal with sporting bodies, we deal mostly with high performance. The Ministry of Sport deals mostly with sport for all. However, there was a sport for all component in our line items that were budgeted under community sports that people apply to the sport company. There's always been, I should say before, that vote has now been, taken out of our budget item and put to the Ministry of Community Development. However, the process has always been submissions to the companies, because at this point in time, what we do is we would have reviewed requests for funding, whether it be for sports days and so on.
Okay,
but
don't
right
go
now,
into
at this
all
point
that
in
detail.
time,
How
we
many-
only
I'm just
deal
trying to
our...
I'm trying to get a macro picture, Chairman.
Yes.
How many sporting organizations do you support, and what is your support?
Right now, currently, we support 15 sporting bodies. That is, our remit is high performance at this point in time.
So the 15, what you consider high performance bodies?
Yes, apart from, as I said earlier, those are the bodies that vie for Olympic participation, or in one instance, cricket, which also has a world championship or high
May I
stakes
direct you
component.
to the Auditor General's report, which states on page 14 that sports' main responsibility is to achieve the objectives of the national sport policy of Trinidad and Tobago, and this policy is based on the principles of equality of opportunity for all citizens. And the policy identifies two key areas: total participation in sport, which involves those organizations which you do not accredit and give support to, which you should be giving some attention to, and high-performance sport. So you're only conducting your business in one area of the two areas which you are responsible for.
Not necessarily, because through those sporting bodies, what we have is a clear pathway in terms of or an understanding that part of their remit is to go out and do talent identification.
All right,
Also through the sport companies,
I will
summer
complete
camps.
this now. Yeah. A database recommendation number 7 speaks about deliver the key objectives of total participation in sport, should compile a database of the people participating in all types of sporting disciplines and events, which includes information on their age, gender, ethnicity, and disabilities. The overall information should be reported annually. Have you attempted to do any of that in the past?
Yes, we get that information through the sporting bodies.
And you have some of that for the 50. So if we ask you to
So
give
yes,
you-
so through the sport development unit, they will be able to give those numbers in terms of their reporting.
have you available that answer?
And I'll have to submit that in writing. I can't tell you that off the top of my head.
Have you sought the bodies, the sporting organizations to give you that answer?
That is part of the service level agreement, which has been
Have you
upgraded.
received them? Have you asked for them, and have you received them? Because you cannot
That
go
is-
on as a sport not knowing your empirical data to make the determinations of implementation policies.
That is part of the requirement to receive funding.
And so you have it or you don't have it?
So yes, that would be able to be submitted in writing.
All right, okay. And last one, your strategies and partnership arrangements to encourage sporting participation and usage through the setting of action plans with targets for individual facilities. And that is recommendation number 9 from the Auditor General, which I would like to humbly suggest to you that in addition to your 18 or 19 organizations that you look after, you begin to search for the other 20 activities in sports that you seem to be not paying attention to, and to help to develop those sporting areas, because item number 8 speaks about that. 8 and 9 speak about those two, and pay particular attention to those recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I recognize Mr. Foster Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to everyone. I want to draw our attention to page 21 of the report of the Auditor General.
21.
And it deals with the same matter of this company in 2011, the Edge Consulting Limited, which we are, based on our deliberations here this morning, still not properly able to determine whether this company was contracted by the Ministry of Sport or by the SPORTT. However, it says here that the company was contracted to conduct an exercise in relation to staffing arrangements. If we go to page 22, under litigation following the redesign exercise, with page 22, we see that in 2011, the chairman of the sport company called a meeting of all staff at the Hainsey Crawford Stadium, and that at 2.12, the chairman proceeded to write all staff, and as a result, 32 members of staff were dismissed with 1 month's salary. Further down, as a result of this action, several members of staff took legal action for compensation. 9 cases have been finalized with total settlements in excess of $2.5 million. In 5 of the 9 cases, Sport had no record of contractual agreements for the respective staff. However, the respective terminated staff had their contracts in their possession. I'm flagging that for response. And, Mr. Chairman, this is very alarming to me as I continue to read. In one of the concluded cases, a former employee who worked for less than 1 day was awarded $90,000 for unfair dismissal. I would like to get, through the chair, from the legal representative from SPORTT, the circumstances that led to this situation developing, and in particular, where the court would have awarded $90,000 to a former employee who worked for less than 1 day. Before I move to my other question, can I get a response to those 2 queries?
Yes, please. Just to be clear, in terms of the surrounding facts, which led to the dismissals, again, that predates me. Member, the Honorable Hines also asked whether it was predicated upon the advice of the Edge and so on. So I would have to do some investigations into that. What I do know, they were served retrenchment letters within a 48-hour period. After receipt of it, naturally, they took recourse in the industrial court. The court was very clear in outlining the fact that the dismissals were harsh and oppressive and not in keeping with good and proper industrial relations. That individual who received the $90,000 were part and parcel of the 32 workers. So I think it's the way in which the dismissal was done. That is the reason for that award.
Can I, through the chair, ask Sport to provide this committee with additional information in relation to this mass dismissal that took place in 2011? Why no defense was put forward by the sport company in these matters, and the justification in terms of what would have been in the judgment for this type of award. Yes? Let me then draw our attention to page 12 of the same report and recommendation 11. Sport should recognize the importance of managing risks associated with the delivery of construction projects with agreed timeframes and budgeted costs. This report shows that Sport did not recognize or manage well the project risk, in that projects were not delivered on time and projected cost to completion increased. For example, assumptions should be supported by feasibility studies that are realistic as possible from the onset. Project risk should be assessed appropriately to allow for change in design or location requirements. And C, there needs to be greater realism regarding the time scale set for delivering project based on cabinet decisions. Can I ask specifically in relation to this recommendation, what has been done to address the concerns raised here?
Yeah, I would like to first indicate that there have been no new projects at Sport Company since we have come on board. That being said, we had a lot to review and to learn with regards using this audit report as a benchmark. Someone who can help us in terms of some of the challenges that would have been faced and some of the things that will put us in terms of recommendations and how to fix that, it would be our project consultant, Dexter Brown.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, do I think Mr. Brown was...
Oh, I'm sorry. Terribly sorry. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I think what I would like to say is that I think some of the findings that are listed here are assuming that the time frames and stuff that were adopted for the projects was somehow misguided. The reasons for the time overruns and the cost overruns was because as an organization, we were unable to make payments, and so it threw us into a situation of default with respect to the FIDIC contract framework that guided both parties. When we could not make payments, it resulted in interest rate penalties. Sometimes the contractors terminated at their own convenience, and the cost overruns were associated with that and not with bad judgment in terms of construction durations and so forth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't want to comment on other than to say that I fully support the views exposed by my members on this committee, by particular Minister Hines and Minister Batiste Primus, because I believe that I am still, my brain is still revolving. My intelligence is being challenged by some of the responses that I'm getting here. So that I have a couple of very easy questions to ask now, to which I'm going to ask direct questions. I'd like to get direct answers. I would like to refer you to the Auditor General's report, recommendation 7. And I want to take from member Gopi Singh. And this is the context of the database, and we're talking about the organization looking at sport for all. My question is this: what is the status of your facilities to accommodate differently abled persons, both as participants and as spectators?
There are a couple of things with regards to that we can answer on in terms of, again, coming back to interacting with the sporting bodies, the Paralympics committee, in terms of which we support through the Olympic Committee, and then in terms of what accommodations are made at sporting facilities. So first, let's start with sporting facilities in terms of, we could put you on to Mr. Anthony Blake, who could answer those questions.
So, morning again, committee. For the national level facilities, which would be the new facilities recently constructed, we'd have done a lot of review with the Paralympic Committee, and with the disabled organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. If you visit any one of these facilities, you'll realize we are fully functional in terms of disabled access to any one of the new facilities.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Say again?
Differently abled.
Apologies, differently abled. So we are fully functional with respect to differently abled persons before we opened the facilities during our testing and commissioning period, which was earlier in the first quarter this year. We also invited a lot of these differently abled organizations to visit the facilities and to see the level of access that we've provided. There is some challenge in terms of the older facilities, such as Hazley Crawford Stadium, which was constructed in the 70s. A lot of retrofitting is needed to have that facility in terms of access to the facility come up to the standard of the existing ones. We have plans in place, however, funding continues to be a challenge in terms of implementing those plans. But what I can say, all new facilities that have been constructed with that requirement in mind.
Mr. Chairman, through you, I would like to request that from the company that they give a listing of all of the facilities under their control and to identify those that are fully compliant, partly compliant, or non-compliant with being able to accommodate differently abled persons, both as participants in the sporting activities and as spectators. And I have one other question, another easy question. And the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport, would be familiar with this, because this is, I understand, I know the young professional from another place. I want to find out from the sport company, do you have an emergency evacuation plan for all your major facilities that you can share with this committee? And two, do your facilities, are they compliant with the existing OSH regulations? I would like to be able to get a response on that.
Yes, we do. And again, the person to deal with that is the officer in charge of facilities, Mr. Blake.
The answer to that question is yes. We have done risk assessments on all the facilities under the remit of the sport company. We've also done emergency evacuation plans on all the facilities under sport company. We have our health and safety consultant that is currently engaging OSHA in terms of compliance with the facilities. Honestly, to the committee, we are not 100% compliant in all of our facilities because of the age of a lot of the facilities. With reference to the new facilities, we have engaged OSHA, fire, and all of the regulatory agencies in terms of coming up to compliance, and we can provide the information in writing.
Through the chair, Mr. Chairman, I would again like to request that similarly to the issue with the differently abled persons, could the sport company provide to this committee a schedule of all of the facilities under their management and the status of OSH compliance and the status of emergency evacuation plans for those entities? Mr. Chairman, two easy questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'm deeply concerned. I heard a response from Mr. Is it Dexter Brown a moment ago, which was tantamount to taking difference with the view clearly expressed by the auditor in the report. And it is not the only occasion, because in this document where we have responses from the SPORTT, they take difference too insofar as the number of projects. At question number 5, it was asked of them, of the 182 projects undertaken, how many were completed to date? And in their response, they said that that is an inaccurate number. Now, the Auditor General does its work in a way that we respect since 1962. And I'm not going to easily digest a challenge to what it has expressed very clearly. One of the recommendations of the Auditor General is that the sport company should ensure that proper financing arrangements should be settled before embarking on a contract or project. And if you had money matters along the way, it means clearly that that was not done. Whoever is responsible, that's another question. But we did not have clearly identified a stream and a source of funding to deal with those matters. And therefore, the response that has been put doesn't bring me any comfort in the face of the Auditor General's report. But I have another matter that I want to address. When you get a moment, but I want to address another matter here, if you'd be gentle enough with me, as indeed I am with you. Now, at page 6 of the Auditor General's report, in paragraph 4, under the rubric, performance indicators are not well defined or measurable, a point that Senator Small and my sister across the floor, Madam Baptiste Primus, made over and over ad nauseum. The auditor says, and I quote very quickly, the performance indicators included Sports 2012-2016 draft strategic plan are neither well-defined nor measurable. That's a serious comment about a professional intervention. The professionals, all of you as professionals, being paid, no doubt, hefty salaries where you are. The auditor is finding from their tremendous collective experience since 1962 that the strategic plans offered by you are neither well-defined nor measurable. Consequently, SPORTT is unable to measure appropriately its success in the delivery of its objectives. This is repeated in this report. Also, Sport's strategic plan did not include information relating to baseline data, to yearly targets and timeframes for completion of annual activities over a 5-year period. Now, this suggests to me, and then when you look at paragraph 5, the rationale for constructing sporting facilities, I describe this to my colleagues as wildness, Trinidadian wildness. The rationale is not clear. Where is it coming from? I call it, is it driven by public need? Well, in fact, Mr. Chairman, just before I go, at page 14 of this report, at the very bottom, the Auditor General's report, right? It says that the sport company, we need to assess whether the sports company is developing and upgrading sporting facilities economically, efficiently, and effectively throughout Trinidad and Tobago. I want to know, in the absence of a clearly defined and measurable strategic plan, this development, all of these projects and so on, where is it coming from? On what policy is it based? Is it driven by public need? Does it take into account current economic circumstances? So that I'm saying, it appears to me that the sports company is running at large, on whim, spending plenty money. And as I close, for the benefit of the members of the public, if they don't understand what we are talking about, let me just read a quick statistic here. Insofar as the annual allocation in the estimates of recurrent expenditure to the sport company is concerned, in 2014, we were talking about $132 million. In 2015, $153 million. $153 plus million. The estimate in 2016 has gone down in light of our current economic circumstances, where this country simply cannot afford any waste and wildness. It has gone down to $104 million. And the estimate for 2017 is the same amount. No doubt what you all have to do is very important. Sport is a critical element of the society's well-being. However, in light of that kind of allocation and salaries and wages for the period 2014 and 2015, your salaries amounted to $20.8 million in 2014. And in 2015, $16.7 million. I'm simply saying we are not comforted. It appears to me that this sports company is running at whim, running at large, not driven by any clear philosophy, not concerned about public expenditure because it's not coming out of your pocket, you getting paid, good, bad, or indifferent. And we've just been going along like that. And to learn this morning, and this might be my final comment, to learn this morning that the recommendations of the very astute Auditor General has not yet even been approached in a meaningful way is frightening, to say the least. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would anyone want to respond?
I would like to respond, sir. A lot of the comments of the just made comments, we agree with. Coming in as a board, we agree with. We could not answer as to the rationale as to why a lot of things were done. We tried to look at it from the perspective of what outcome can we have from this at this point in time. This is the predicament that we're in. And we're dealing with a situation here where these very proceedings can impact in terms of the perception of sport and whether or not we're wasting money in sport. And I want to make that very clear. A lot of those questions that you've had are questions that I had in my own personal, private view before coming into this. And we got into a situation, as one director would have said, we're trying to fix a plane while it's in the air. And we looked at all of those things in terms of the expenditure and how it was calibrated, and we find great discomfort in it. However, we have facilities that are on the books. We have two choices. It's either we blow them up with dynamite or we maintain them and we utilize them. Those are the two choices. Are we going to put in place the utilization plans, which it is we have been developing with the sporting bodies to get use out of them? Yes, because the first option is not on the table. So the second option is let us get the utilization out of it. Now, what we would like to go in here today that is useful to us is to express the challenges that we face in trying to fix this situation or make best of the situation. One, we have no sporting industry. Let's get that clear. We have a sporting sector. The reason why we don't have a sporting industry is because we don't have the consumers to support that industry. So therefore, we have ended up in a situation, and let me make this clear, the sport company acts on directives coming from cabinet. All the rationalization and why it is we do this and why we do that doesn't come to us. There's an instruction, build. There can be a certain amount of pushback in terms of being in light of what the circumstances are. And then that directive, the employees then face the choice of move on or execute the directive. So that is where there's no women fancy there. That is the process in which things come. Now, that being said, if we were to look at what the cost of the facilities are, in one particular case, and I draw in serious reference because this is me being not just as chairman of a sport company, but a sporting enthusiast. One facility was constructed at a cost of over 220 years of the allocation of what we give that sport for the year. So 220 years of the allocation equal one venue. When we put that into perspective, and we are now coming into this and doing, okay, we have heard that these facilities are going to make money. These facilities are going to bring sport tourism. These facilities are going, and those were not utterances by sport or sport company. Now I'm saying this as somebody who has just come into the situation. Yeah. With regards to the line items, we clearly identified 14 and 15, and several of the line items being addressed through the service level agreement with the sporting bodies, who are the conduits of which we interact with the sporting bodies. We have no autonomy other than telling them this is how we're going to spend money, this is how we want you to direct it, to achieve the objectives of what we want to see, how we want these facilities utilized. I want to draw your attention to something. We probably have more seating capacity per capita than anywhere else in the world. Do we need more facilities? No. What we need are utilization plans. The challenges that we face is the allocations that we get. And even now, when recognizing all of these things, we are debilitated based on how those allocations come. And I'll give you an example. And we need to deal with this at a social sciences perspective, and I beg that you indulge me so people understand the environment of sport. We have sporting products. So part of this is merchandising. We have sporting products and sporting drinks that spend more money in carnival than they do in sport. Why is that? Because the government prefers to spend more money in carnival, up to the 200 million, 300 million at times, and we as an allocation in terms of sporting activities may have 10, may have 15 for the entire year. Now, what happens is we have the responsibility of maintaining the facilities and constructing the facilities. There was a directive given that no religious organization or no sporting organization pay to use any of the facilities for the events. So therefore, the issue of revenue generation becomes debilitated. That being said, we're depending now on private promoters. That is the only thing that I could see myself being a promoter as to why some sort of utilization option came onto the table. Now, with regards to that, the feasibility of it is a flawed and failed one across the board. If you were to look at it from dollars and cents, which is being proposed over and over again, and I hear in all different sorts of speeches and so on, this is what's going to happen. It's a catastrophic failure, in my personal opinion. And now it's one that we are brought to account for. In addition to that, I would like to shift, given the fact that we now have these assets, over $3 billion in assets that function now like liabilities. Why? Because we're not given the funding, and I'm talking about historically, I'm not pointing at anyone in particular, to activate or to put activities in place. So we have these sporting bodies that we have these allocations that are given for, and they have no coaches, they have no, and we can't help, and then we're telling them to go out and find funding. But guess what? Carnival competes directly with sport for space and for funding. And sport does not have the sin factor. It doesn't have now that funding to compete with Carnival. That's exactly what it is. I'll give it from a basic level so that you have an understanding.
I think I recognize Mrs. Batiste.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would want to ask both the chairman of SPORTT and the acting permanent secretary the following questions. And my questions emerges from the main findings of the Auditor General reports under litigation following restructuring. I would like to ask the rationale which resulted in the organizational review and redesign exercise initiated by the Ministry of Sport on the 29th of October 2010, the rationale. I would also like to find out who are the personnel comprising the Edge Consulting. Who are they? I would also like to find out the terms of reference that were given to the Edge Consulting and what were the deliverables. Mr. Chairman, on page 23 of the Auditor General's report at 2.14 states, legal representation for SPORTT has cost over $137,000 for one of the 9 settled cases. Legal costs for the remaining 8 cases and the 6 outstanding cases have yet to be clearly quantified. This report dates back to 2014. Today is the 2nd of November 2016. I would like to ask either the chairman or the permanent secretary acting, have you all sat down and quantified the cost for the remaining 8 cases and the 6 outstanding cases? I would also like to ask, given the fact that there was mass dismissal from the organization, what is the human resource competency in the organization right now?
So I'll address your last question first. When we came into the organization, there was no human resource manager. We filled that position. What I can tell you is...
May I inquire, what is the nomenclature of the position? Is it a director, manager, what? Human
manager.
Manager,
yes.
human.
Yes.
So you're saying the organization now has one human resource manager?
And a department.
In a department? Is the department staffed?
Yes. How many people do you have? One assistant. So there's an assistant.
So you're talking about a human resource capacity of 2 persons?
Yeah.
And you have a staff of? The current staff is
I
how
just want
many?
to, it's under 100. It's now 99, yes.
The current staff, Mr. Chairman, is how many employees?
99. That is where we are at this point in time.
So you have 2 human resource, 1 manager, 1 assistant, with a staff of 99 persons.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to find out also the remaining cases before the industrial court. Given that no evidence was laid for the previous cases, is it the same with the other cases before the court?
According to legal, yes.
So it means, therefore, that in 2010, someone or persons went on a frolic of their own, costing the citizenry of this country in excess, to date, in excess of $3 million. Hence, my question, have you all quantified what it would cost for the remaining cases before the court? No, I want an answer.
Okay, so what we can provide for you in writing is what has been paid so far. I wouldn't want to get into speculating on what.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
With regards to the
One
legal
second,
fees.
Mr. Philip,
Okay.
one second. Mr. Chairman, the documents we have before us are pellucidly clear. They give information as to how much monies have been paid out. I do not wish Mr. Philip nor the Permanent Secretary acting to provide information for which the Auditor General has already certified. My concern is how much more monies that we, the citizenry, the taxpayers, have to pay out for the reckless action that took place in 2010.
What I have before me is what we've paid to date. All right, and what I could tell you is 8,000,003. Let me know. Can I put on the legal who has been dealing with that specifically?
Member, good morning. There are 2 outstanding cases which, as I said before, are part and parcel of the entire set of employees who were dismissed. At this juncture, we are pursuing negotiations with the unions because, and I'm sure you would appreciate, the matters that were tried and sought to be defended by the company, they were lost with judgments emanating therein. So therefore, for the both, it's approximately, one is $119,000, which I think will be settled at, and the other is approximately $845,000. But in that matter, without going too much into it, there is a legal issue that would be raised, and it would be sent to the recognition board. But those are the only outstanding 2 matters.
Is it then that you are saying that in the case where the negotiations are taking place for $845,000, that SPORTT has raised the question on worker in good standing?
Yes, member. If I may, we reached the negotiation stage. The IR consultant was brought in.
Who is the IRA consultant?
Mr. Norman Romani. And that question was raised.
Mr. Chairman, through you. SPORTT has already acted recklessly. I would strongly advise that SPORTT does not pursue that direction, because it would mean that acknowledging that what you did was wrong, but you are now trying to prevent an employee from what is rightfully or rightfully his or her. You can't commit a wrong, and in trying to fix it, you inflict deeper wounds.
Understood.
That's my strong advice to SPORTT in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. All right. Dr. Gopi Singh and Mr. Hines raised their questions. I just wanted to deal with an earlier matter you raised. Do you have an estimate or concluded figure on what it costs TNT athletes to participate in this year's Olympics? Do we have a figure?
What we can give is the figures that we supply the athletes. Of course, athletes will have sponsorship and so on that they will receive and derive funding from other areas. Other than that, to give them to give you what their budgets would have been, that would have more than likely been put to the sport development or elite development units. So it would be dependent on the various athletes. We can give you an estimate per athlete or in total. So our participation at the Olympics would have cost the sport company $1 million to the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee as a figure. In addition to that, there would have been several athletes that would have been supported as the elite athletes, both through the elite athlete funding at the Ministry of Sport and sport company. So it depends based on the sport. So you want a total figure expended for what period? If you could be specific, we could give you that information.
No, I'm talking about for this year's participation. If you could have provided the committee with an estimated amount in writing.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Yes, we can. That's very specific figures.
All right, I think Dr. Gopi Singh wants to raise a question.
Yeah, thank you. Earlier on, I was alluding to the issue of how you conduct your business in the absence of any defined policy, which you said went back to 2002, which is antiquated. My understanding that your previous board appeared before a joint select committee of Parliament and had provided in 2012 a strategic plan 2012 to 2016. Are you aware of that? And the joint select committee indicated then that that plan was incomplete. Are you aware of that plan, and is it now complete to carry you forward, or that has been carrying you forward for the last year? PS, and if there's any new strategic plan to carry forward from 2016 to 2020?
There is a new strategic plan being developed that will take us forward.
No. But you indicated that you were tweeting on the 2002...
That's sport policy.
Sport policy.
And there is a plan, strategic plan also being developed in conjunction with policy.
No, but there is an existing plan as indicated by the Auditor General, 2012 to 2016, a strategic plan. Are you aware of that? And are you working in vacuum, or are you utilizing that plan to carry you forward? Or are you utilizing a new one from 2016 to 2020? Because that forms the core of your movement forward for your implementation of programs and policies. And if you're working in vacuum without a strategic plan, where are you going? And the Auditor General highlighted that there is a plan 2012 to 2016. Can you give us, PS, what is your take on it?
Yes, the plan, the strict plan, projected over 5 years.
Are you aware of that that strategic plan to 2012?
Yes, we are aware of the plan.
Are you directing the sport company to work in accordance with that plan?
Yes, the sport company.
No, can I ask the sport company, are you aware of that plan?
I personally was not aware of the specifics of the plan.
All right. So there is a 2012-2016 as indicated by the Auditor General. It might not have been complete as stated by the Joint Select Committee in 2012 to the previous board. So I will ask you to avail yourself of that, because it seems as though you're not acting on any national visioning policy. You're working with an antiquated 2002, and you're working with an absence of a strategic plan. So therefore, you're bound not to succeed. And therefore, this is why there is a chaos in your operatives and your entire implementation of programs and policies. Enough suffice for that. Now, part of this audit was to look at the upgrading of the reference to the development of and upgrading of sporting facilities in Trinidad. I know Tobago does separate. Could you give this country, through this, an understanding at a national level how many sporting facilities we have, and in terms of development and upgrading of sporting facilities? How many do we have? What sporting facilities we have? And I would like to ask you to include in that the multipurpose indoor facilities, the corporation grounds, the stadia, and the regional indoor complexes. I'm asking you that question because in your answer on page 14 of your answer, response to the request for written submission to the PAEC, February 2016, there's money allocated to you for that. $74 million. So do you have that answer now? Or? But it is important for the national community to understand what sport looks after at this moment.
Mr. Chairman, would you be able to answer?
I would prefer, because it's a very specific question, to provide that in writing so you don't have any gaps, please.
Off the cuff, you are chairman and the PS is there. Could you give us a little understanding? How many stadia there are? How many regional complexes? How many centers? Well, we know the cycling velodrome, the aquatic center, and the tennis center. Are they complete at the moment?
Yes, the three nationals are complete. In fact, the sport company has moved its office to the velodrome.
All right. What about the Brian Lara Stadium? Is it complete now?
No, and that is under UDCOT.
Could you give us an idea of the total cost of the Brian Lara Stadium from inception?
That's under UDCOT, so we can't give that information. Yes.
Right. Okay, fine. The multipurpose indoor facilities, what is the state of their construction now? There are three.
Okay, so I can put you on to Mr. Blake, who will give you a greater detail on that.
Just a quick answer. Percentage completion?
Yes, good day again, Chair. In terms of the indoor facilities, the only one that is totally complete would have been Sandy Grande Indoor. That is 100% complete in terms of the project listing that we have there.
Right. What about the others? What are the others, where they are, and how much completion?
In terms of the other facilities, we have, let's see the other two. Irwin Park in Saparia, which is 100% complete also. Apologies.
Yeah, just to continue on what Mr. Blake is saying, we commenced a total of 4 regional facilities. Phase 1 was completed for 2 of them, that's India and Carapo grounds. And the other 2, Brian Lara, is about 85% complete with a scheduled completion in December of this year. And Irwin Park, which is in Saparia, is 100% complete.
What about the 3 indoor?
Brian Lara regional.
The multipurpose facilities. You said there were 4. What about the other 2? You said
there were
Irvin
4
Park?
regionals. The 2 Carapo and India, phase 1 were 100% completed. The other 2 is Brian Lara and Irwin Park. Irwin Park is at 100%. Brian Lara is at 85%.
All right, thank you. Multipurpose facilities. Which ones they are now? Multipurpose indoor facilities. There are 3.
The scope was changed, and there's only one now. It's Sandy Grande Indoor Facility. The loan for the facilities was repurposed, and the money was diverted to the construction of the national facilities.
But in your answer here, on page 14, you have for fiscal year 2016, sport was given an allocation of $74 million for all projects as displayed in the spreadsheet below. And under item 135, you have 3 multipurpose indoor facilities, and 5 million was allocated. Has that been changed?
Yes, it has been changed, and I think in the answer there you see change to 148.
I'm not seeing 148, but I saw
3
it here.
multipurpose indoors.
Uh-huh.
And you would see under 135, we have changed to 148.
Yes.
All right. So what I was explaining
But
is
where
that
is 148? It's not here.
Sandy.
You did not show us what 148 was about.
Say again? Right. So the 148 would have been under the nationals projects. We got money for one, and that would have been the Sandy Grande indoor. That is what we'd have done. We'd have utilized money under that vote to do the national level facilities because of the change of site for the aquatic center and the cycling velodrome and so on. We had an increase in scope in terms of the type of foundation, the amenities that go with it and so on.
What about the other two? Which were the other two that's supposed to be done and you only changed to one now?
And Ojo.
The multi-purpose indoor facilities.
Bukmalatres and Ojo Road in Sandy Grande.
Those are the other two?
Those were the other two identified by Cabinet at the time.
And regional indoor complexes.
Regionals, that would be India, Karapo. Those are the facilities Mr. Brown would have just gone over in terms of India, Karapo, and so on. The 4 facilities, Irwin Park and Brian Lara.
Could you put those things in writing? We will ask for those things in writing.
Just have last question.
Finally, and then after we go to Mr.
Quickly.
Small. And then
Have you said you do not generate any income,
one final.
but the opportunity is available for you to generate income by the use of these 3 complexes that have been completed: the tennis, the aquatic center, and the cycling velodrome. Are you in any discussion with the Ministry of Tourism so that jointly you can produce a plan for quick implementation to make sports tourism an important aspect of your gaining funding? Is there any discussion whatsoever with the Ministry of Tourism to bring sports tourism in these 3 centers?
Yes.
Just give us a brief response and then put
Okay,
it in writing.
firstly, yes, we do generate revenue. We don't retain revenue. So that means any of the money that is gotten from people or promoters and so on, it goes into the consolidated fund. And yes, with regards to sport tourism, we have been in collaboration with the Tourism Development Company. And one of the things we are suggesting in going forward is that there's several promoters and people that are already doing the job and we don't want to duplicate their efforts. So what we're trying to do is to look at who the winners are in terms of already having activities that attract destination arrivals.
One final question on that. When do you expect these facilities to be put to use so that they could generate some income from sports tourism? Is it 2017, 2018? When?
We already have.
It's nice to think about it, but
yes, we already have teams that are booked to come here, particularly for the aquatic center. We've already had opening events, the Pan American Championships at the National Velodrome, where there were a number of arrivals for that event as well. So yes, that has already begun.
So when are you going to generate the funds?
When are we going to generate the funds directly to the
from the sports tourism?
That has already happened. So every person that arrives here would have paid some sort of a registration
fee. You have a plan
fee
for 2016, 2017, and 2017, 2018. Is there something concrete that the people of Trinidad and Tobago could say that these centers now are generating funds?
Right. So we're at the stage now where the final rate structures have gone forward for approval. And just to bring you back a bit, what we had to do was a lot of consultation and a lot of research in terms of making the right decisions. We find off-the-cuff decisions in terms of going forward. We end up in trouble in the long term.
Yes, sir, but you still haven't answered the question. If you can't answer it now, could you submit that in writing to us?
Yes. Yes,
you still haven't answered the question, Mr. Philip. You're beating around the bush.
Mr. Philip, we will put it in writing and you will respond. Mr. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, well, I think I will, given the essence of time, I just want to make a comment, and I have something I would ask to the chairman. I'm not enamored of state companies or any, in particular state entities, forgive me, persecuting employees who have been wrongly dismissed. I don't want to put it any plainer than that. I think that as an entity, as a chairman, you come in and you recognize, assess the facts, and rather than pay attorneys and pay IR consultants to try to fight matters that you very likely are going to lose, I think that as an entity, you should call in the respective employees and try to settle the matters and avoid paying, because for me it damages the reputation of the company. And as a state entity, you represent, are being funded by taxpayers. So I have a challenge with that, and my suggestion for now and for going forward, that when these matters come up, I would like for the board to consider, let's see how we could settle these matters rather than trying to go through the industrial court. My one request through the chairman is that I would like to understand, I would like a schedule from the company of all the legal costs for all of the matters, all the costs for the various IR consultants, and how much has been spent, so that, and then how much the company has eventually had to pay out. Because my concern is that there's going to be a large legal bill, there's going to be a large IR consultant bill that could have been avoided.
We'll put that in writing and you will supply that. Mr. Hines.
Much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say the Auditor General as well spoke on the question of fixed assets. It said that the company did not present to the auditors a formal fixed asset policy, and it said more. The sport company indicated that the sport company has a draft fixed asset policy that was never approved by 2 previous boards. Currently, this policy is being tabled and so on. So I would like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that for starters, that the company, because you did tell us earlier that you have a number of assets which you don't want to dynamite, we have them. We need at the very least to have a fixed asset policy and an updated register. That's the least we can do in those circumstances. I want to say that we understand that you have come and you have inherited a dynamite with a short fuse, and many have exploded before you did. And we appreciate that your role is to improve things, but we hold you to doing just that. Finally, the Auditor General at page 41, paragraph 417, had a look at a sample of 18%. It visited 19 of the corporation grounds, representing 18% of that corporation grounds. And the situation with respect to these 19 corporation grounds was as followed. 10 had been completed, work was in progress on 3, work was yet to commence on 4, 1 had been abandoned, and 1 the subject of a legal matter. I have a suspicion, because the Auditor General pointed out that you would have gone ahead to do work without the land acquisition issues being properly and in advance sorted out. That happened with the Point Fortin Highway, and my experience tells me it causes all kinds of problems. Going forward, you get the land issue sorted out first before you begin any work to avoid this. And finally, I have not, like the auditor, had the benefit of visiting these sites, but I see some images on page 42 of the auditor report of a couple of them. The Bucaro Road Recreation Ground that cost $5 million. Yeah? It looks to me like a little shed. I don't know what else was done. But value for money is a very critical issue. There's another one here, the Grand River Recreation Ground. This we're talking about the 5th of November 2013 now, because this is all historic, right? But in February 2007, SPORTT awarded a contract for just over $2.4 million to undertake works at that ground. The completion date was supposed to have been April 2008. Payments in excess of $2 million, 93% of the contract value were made, but the SPORTT did not ensure completion of the works. In March of 2012, 5 years later, SPORTT awarded a contract for almost $250,000 to Exitech Limited for consultancy services in relation to it. SPORT paid $125,000, but the project was still not completed. And in March 2013, SPORTT contracted another company At the cost of $307 for design works, the works are unfinished and worse, Mr. Chairman, deteriorating. Now, in conclusion, it appears to me that a successful business venture or enterprise requires intellect and it requires business acumen. From all that I have seen in the Auditor General's report, it appears to me that in this company, both those two elements are woefully short. And not only the sports company, there's a lot in Trinidad and Tobago that is done on the basis of emotions and wildness, as I described it earlier, and in the absence of good business acumen and intellect. Let that not be the way forward. We can't afford it anymore. I close.
Foster Common will be the last person.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, on January 7, 2011, something occurred in this country in relation to the sport company that should not happen again. As I read this, I'm alarmed, and the country should be alarmed that something like this can happen, where this sort of mass firing could take place and cause taxpayers to be spending money to correct this ill after so many years. It is unacceptable, and I would hope that the current management and board of the Sport TT would be taking the necessary actions at this point in time to fix its HR situation to the extent that such a thing should not ever occur again. And it's unfortunate that the taxpayers now have to pay for this very heinous act that took place in 2011. I'm alarmed at this, that something like this can happen in Trinidad and Tobago. That's my contribution.
Oh, well, Mr. Chairman of the Sport, Acting Permanent Secretary, there are a number of areas that we could not pursue this evening or today. First of all, we'll be writing to you seeking details on a number of areas. For example, we didn't have time today to deal with the issue of staff shortage in the accounts department, and we will be writing you on that one. We would like to have a detailed submission on the implementation of the 15 recommendations in the special report issued by the Auditor General. We'll be writing Do you have an internal audit policy, may I ask? You have. Could you submit that in writing for us? Okay. No. Well, Acting Permanent Secretary, could you submit that for us in writing? The internal audit policy?
Response, eh? I think there's...
It's in the response.
The framework is submitted already.
The Aquatic Center, as an example, before, when is it going to be open to the public?
To the public with regards to
like access to.
Okay, so we've already had opening events at the facility where the public was invited, and also it is open for national team training at this point in time. So that is being scheduled between water polo and we have no divers at this point in time. However, we did do a diving demonstration at one of the openings where we brought the Jamaican diver who participated at the Olympics
There's an area that deals with kids. When is that going to be
that is the
open?
fun, that is the leisure center.
When is that going to be open?
We have some work to do there in terms of fencing the area, because we couldn't secure the area properly in terms of having other activities. So the challenge that we face now is we always have to have security posted there whenever there are any activities going on. So that is presently on the way in terms of getting that done. So we're hoping to have that open by January in terms of being able to have ticketed arrivals or participation.
All right, Mr. Phillip, given the discussion today, and as chairman, given what is going on or what has gone on at that organization, what would you do differently in going forward? And would you want to share with us what you as chairman would do differently going forward?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I think the first thing is that we started to gather information, pertinent information, and making any moves forward, whether it be through utilization or even in terms of looking at our expenditure as far as how we deal with the sporting bodies. It's a critical part of our operation because, I mean, today we spoke a lot about the concrete and steel and the accounting and so on, but we spend little time speaking about the athletes and the programs and so on. And that is one of the things that we're doing differently in terms of going forward. Sorry, is that? So in going forward, some of the things that we are doing is, as I said, collecting information before we make decisions, greater utilization, and in fact, one of the things that we realize that we have to do, and a simple thing in terms of our sporting bodies and promoters utilizing those facilities, that it is to the benefit not only to the participants of the sport, but spectators. We don't have, put it simply, what we're trying to correct is we do not have annual events that have justified the construction of those facilities. That is the long and short of it. There's no Super Bowl, there's nothing like that. And we now have to get involved in creating and assisting to create content. And out of content comes economics, expenditure. It comes where people sell shoes, merchandise, and all of those sorts of things. And we understand, unlike before, the catalyst of that spin-off is through the activities.
In order to make your company more efficient, more effective, and more economical in its operations, would you want to submit in writing for the committee's consideration your recommendations, your plans for consideration? Because remember, we are here to help sport to become more efficient, more effective.
Of course.
So could you generate a report or a statement to us as it relates to your thinking on making that body, that organization, more efficient, more effective, and more economical in its operation?
Would be very happy to.
Right. And Acting Permanent Secretary, I'd like to ask you to refer to page 8 of the State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual. And if you could do some homework in terms of understanding the relationship between the line ministry and these state enterprises that fall under your jurisdiction. And as I'm on that point, the investments division of the Ministry of Finance, there is on page 8 of this manual, one of the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance and of course the line ministry in collaboration is the need to review strategic plans. And Dr. Tim Gopi Singh was asking the question earlier. There's a strategic plan for the Ministry of Sport for 2012 to 2016. And the question was being asked whether that plan is still being implemented. And we didn't get a proper answer from the permanent secretary. So I wanted to ask the Investments Division whether you are aware of this plan, strategic 2012-2016, and whether you are aware of a review that is on its way for 2017 to 2022, as it relates to the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Chairman, what I can say is that the plan, before it comes to the Ministry of Finance, it must be approved by the board and also countersigned by the line ministry. What I can say is that we may have a plan, and I stand corrected, but I can get back to you on that, whether a plan was submitted for 2012 to 2016 to the Ministry of Finance. Going forward, I am not aware of any plan being developed by the sports company of Trinidad and Tobago at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, we'd like to give you the last say in terms of submitting your final comments. What I'd like to tell you, include before you speak, is that you can expect from us a number of questions that we would like answers to, and we will give you a time frame for responding to those questions as it relates to this particular exercise that we are about to conclude. And we hope that we will get those answers within the time frame that we have advanced when they come to you. And we also, the committee will determine when we meet, based on our discussions, whether we need to bring you back at an appropriate time. So we'll want to ask you, Jenny, you have any?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would really want to reinforce my earlier advice to SPORTT about the direction they're going in with their new industrial relations consultant, Mr. Norman something, I can't remember his full name, and the advice on challenging working in good standing to deny the worker his or her just due. They should abandon going in such a direction.
Mr. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We'd like to thank you all for having the opportunity to come here and to report. We're quite happy to come back again. Rest assured that the members of the board of directors and the members of staff are keenly interested in sport and have a vested interest in the development of sport in Trinidad and Tobago. We take a lot of your questions on board and comments on board, and some of us who the activities of which the questions were asked and that predated our coming into the company. It is one where it's a bit challenging to try to go back and get all of the information. We have to recognize we have to get all of the information to make sure that in going forward, for whatever reason decisions were made, that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past and we continue to do the things that were successes. So I'd like to thank everyone here who was, for me personally, my baptism of fire into an experience like this. I appreciate that. And I'd like to thank the staff, the Ministry of Sport and the members of the sport company who we recognize coming into the company. They were all over the place in disarray and in different levels of emotional states, having gone through a difference in direction in several directions and times over a 5-year period, or even before that in terms of us trying to find our way. It's important to note that we have been consulting with other such institutions around the world and finding out that they themselves have a lot of similar problems and that we are not unique in the problems that we face on all counts of things that you have mentioned. And we are looking at how it is we can interact with them. We've already signed an MOU with Sport England in terms of learning from them and how unique it was, even though they had such a high medal haul. that they still had so many of these issues dealing with the sporting bodies, dealing with the political directorate, and all of the other issues. So we have a vested interest in turning this thing into something golden and something that the public can look forward to, and turn what we now consider $3 billion in liabilities into assets by rethinking or having the public rethink how they look at sport. Well, this is a dollars and cents proposition alone, but we think it should be a utilization and success on an international scale type of proposition that we're looking at instead, and not just dollars and cents.
May I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, extend to the members of the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Auditor General's Department, the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, the members of the public. On our collective behalf, we want to thank you for being here with us for the period that you have been here. And I want you to leave with the clear assurance that our responsibility is to ensure that there is efficiency, there is efficacy, there is effectiveness, and there is economy in the operations of all state enterprises that come before us, and that the population is getting value for money. That is what we are here about. So thank you once again for being here. This meeting is now suspended because we have a meeting thereafter. Thank you very much.
Minister Sharia,